Welcome to our Portuguese Table podcast. I'm Maria Lawton, the Azorean Green Bean.
And I'm Angela Simoes, and we're just two chicks dishing about Portuguese food, culture, and what it means to be Portuguese.
So grab a glass of vinho or un copo de café and join us as we talk about our favorite foods, reminisce about growing up Portuguese,
and interview some of our community's most successful chefs and food writers.
So sit down at our Portuguese table.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Portuguese Table. Bom dia, Maria. How are you, my dear?
Bom dia, querida. I am fine. I'm fine.
Good. Good.
Today, I'm really excited of today's participants in our podcast.
Yeah, you got to cook with them, right? You visited them.
I did. I got to cook with them the last time I was there in California. I got to be at the cafe. I got to meet Lucia. I got to meet Manuel. I got to meet Jason. So, and more than anything, I got to eat there too, which was
lucky,
amazing.
Yeah. So let's bring in our guests. We have owner of Cafe Lucia in Healdsburg, California, which is in wine country up north. Lucia Azevedo Fincher, owner. Hi, Lucia.
Hi there. Hello from Sonoma County. How are you?
Good. And then we have Jason Santos, who is currently the director of administration, but started as the chef, and he'll tell us all about how his role has evolved there, because I know he still plays a big role in the food part. And welcome, Jason.
Hi, ladies. Pleased to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So yeah, it's been awesome watching Lucia, you and Manuel kind of build this, I don't want to call it an empire together, but sort of is. I mean, it's been really cool because, Manuel has La Salette and then Tasca, but in between that, he ventured out with you and opened Cafe Lucia in Healdsburg, which is kind of a risk. And I'd love to hear about your path because there's no Portuguese people up there, really. I mean, there's Portuguese people like Petaluma and like kind of in the area, but it's not. I mean, you're relying almost, I would say, 100% on an American crowd, right? So.
Yes, for the most part, a lot of locals and tourists, and but we do get quite a few Portuguese folks that make the trip up on the weekends. That's why we make a point to stay open on all day on Saturdays and Sundays, because they'll come up for we just had a family come up from Antigua the other day. We get folks from San Jose,
cool.
So we really appreciate the Portuguese support. Absolutely.
That's awesome to hear. So why don't you tell us how it all came to be?
Yeah, tell us your story, hon.
Tell us your story. So I grew up in the town of Sonoma, so that's where our flagship restaurant is, La Salette, as you know, and my brother and his wife own that. And then I met my husband about 25 years ago, and he was born and raised in Healdsburg, so moved here. And I always just wanted to open a Portuguese restaurant in my new hometown. I got tired of that drive to Sonoma. It's only about 45 minutes, but still, you want to have a little bit of Portuguese wine with your meal. So this space opened up, and for me, the timing just worked out. My daughters were in high school at that point, and it was just mom's time, and so I called my brother. We'd had a lunch, I would say a couple months before, my brother Manuel and I, at La Salette, and had quite a bit of vin verde, and so wouldn't it be fun to open a Portuguese restaurant in Healdsburg? And then this spot opened up, and it just kind of all fell into place, really.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we've been here in December. It was 5 years in December that we've been here. So.
5 years already. I feel like it just opened.
It's such a beautiful place. It really is. And Angela and I were talking before, I had a wonderful time when I was there. I got to meet all of you, and you let me in your kitchen to cook. And
yeah, it was great to have you. You were like a celebrity for us.
It was just an amazing time. And we got to film an episode, part of the episode for Maria's Portuguese Table there. And I got to cook with Chef Manuel. And it was just everyone there was just so sweet and nice. And the meal that we got to make and eat and enjoy was just fantastic. I mean, just great. I have wonderful memory of
thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you here. And yeah, I would say our team, it really is like a family here. We're definitely a family owned. My daughters work the business. My oldest daughter started as a busser, and now she's a server. My youngest daughter is a busser and works as a host. And, sometimes in a pinch, they get, they're on call, something comes up and we need an extra hand, or someone's not feeling well, and they're right there, and my biggest fans for sure.
That's awesome.
I also love how when you come into it, you have it's almost like an outdoor patio, but it's really indoor kind of thing, but it looks outdoor. It has that nice feel to it. And then when you come in, you see those huge, beautiful pictures, hydrangeas, and you see the pictures from the islands, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it feels very much at home for someone who is Portuguese.
I would say that the transported is what I would love for people to feel, and I think that's what happens when especially when we get the Portuguese guests come in, and they love to point out how where they've been, and it's a really great conversation piece. And yeah, our courtyard area, it's really popular. We hold rehearsal dinners or private events there. It's just really a little oasis, I think.
Now, I'm sorry, Angela. I was just going to say, before all of this, the empire, as Angela likes to call it, before this empire, where did it all begin? Where does your family come from?
So my family is from San Jorge. So my two oldest brothers, Manuel, and my other brother was born there, and then my parents immigrated. And I was born here, so I joke that I'm the welcome to America baby. And so, we're first generation American, and all the things that come with that. My parents wanted to come here for, the original plan was to come make a little money and then go back home. And by the time they went back home, they had 4 kids, because my youngest brother came along a few years later. And they went back home and then were there for a couple months and then ended up coming back. And then, of course, like most immigrants, their dream was to buy a home, which they eventually did. And so in Sonoma, and then that's just where we settled. So I lived in Sonoma since I was about 7. And since Manuel was about 9. So, yeah, so I've lived in Sonoma County my whole life.
Well,
I've been fortunate enough to go back to San Jorge, so.
You're I should say you're American made with Portuguese parts. Is that what they call it? So
yes.
That's
yes, for sure.
Now
we joke that I was maybe somewhere along the way. We're not really sure. So
you have 4. There's 4 siblings. There's 4 in all in the family. Only the 2 of you, Manuel and yourself, are in the restaurant business. Are the other 2 also involved?
They're not currently, but they actually, at some point in their lives, my other brother did own a restaurant. It wasn't Portuguese. And then my other brother also worked in catering. And then I think they just got smart and went on to other things. But yeah, it's a crazy business, and it kind of calls you in a way. Sometimes I think, I wish it would have been easier if I had a different dream. But what are you going to do? So
yeah. If it's what you love, it's what you love, right? And you have to love it because you live, breathe, and everything. And so, how did Jason get brought into this? How did you find him? Or Jason, how did you find Lucia?
Find
each other.
It's interesting. So I grew up in Watsonville, which is a few hours south from here. And the first time I ate at La Salette was actually because my now wife was going to Sonoma State University. I came to visit her, and we drove the 30 minutes to the only Portuguese restaurant north of the Golden Gate at the time. Had a great meal there, and this was long before I ever had really decided on cooking. I always been around food and cooked at home, but not professionally. Fast forward a couple years later, I go to the Culinary Institute in Napa, at Greystone, and then started staging with Chef Manuel at La Salette after school once a week. And I did that for a little over a year, going to La Salette and just kind of training and just being around the restaurant and the food for fun, really. And then as I was graduating, I was talking to Chef Manuel one night there at the restaurant, and he said, what's your plan going on? this was a few months before I graduated, and I said, I don't really know. I'm actually pretty nervous. And he posed the question, well, are you worried about finding a job or making the right decision? And my response was, well, I'd love to worry about making the right decision if I had a bunch of jobs lined up. But since I don't have any jobs lined up, I'm just worried about getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of said, well, interestingly, you say that, me and my sister are planning on a new restaurant up in Healdsburg. Is that something that you would be interested in working for? And when he posed the question, I assumed, okay, I'd come in, be a cook, do something like that. I really didn't expect I was going to get the role that I eventually did. And it was great. And it was perfect timing. I graduated in October. We opened in December. So it was really just the right time to hit the ground running. And then got to be the opening chef de cuisine here. Did that for about 2.5 years in the kitchen before being asked to transition my role into kind of a more overseeing role. So now I spend time between here and the restaurants in Sonoma and do a little bit of everything, menu development, and still very involved with the food, but also have recently become a certified sommelier. So I help out with all the wine lists and kind of serve that role as well. And a little bit of the finances and really do anything that's asked as best I can.
And Jason has been awesome. I just wanted to go on. He's just been an amazing part of the team here, just willing to do whatever. And he's, if there's ever a question, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's a trivia question, it's like, ask Jason, because he knows. He's like, I don't know where he gets it, but he knows everything.
Can I be honest? When I met all of you, I really, truly felt that Jason was also a sibling of yours. Like
well, people have asked me that. I don't think we look alike, but people have asked me if he's my son. And at first I thought, why are they asking me that? And I thought, well, I guess I am old enough to be his mom.
No, I wasn't going to say son. I was thinking he was your brother also, as well as Manuel's brother.
Well, he's definitely a family member as far as Manuel and I are concerned. Our family is concerned.
Absolutely. That is the feeling that I have, is Jason is part of your family, because you can see the love and respect he has for you, as well as for both of you having that love and respect for him. So I think it's a beautiful match. It truly is. And to be able to give someone like Jason, like you, to be able to say, okay, we want to have you be part of this, and we're going to have you grow and learn the business and learn how, first being in the back end and then being in the front end. And then now you're going to be working with the wines, and now you're going to be, and it is truly a mark on you on, how they see it in you. They saw it in you, I should say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I'm forever grateful for the opportunity, and both Lucia and Manuel have been very forthcoming and willing to teach me and show me everything I would ever really want to learn, or maybe didn't want to learn, but they decided that I should learn about the restaurant industry. And it's been really an incredible experience. And in 5 years here, I think I've learned, definitely more than 5 years worth of experience just in all my different roles and everything that they've shared with me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, he's been just willing, like I said, to do anything. And we've learned quite a few things from him. But, I kind of joke that the restaurant is like a teaching restaurant. Like they have teaching hospitals. And we just teach anyone that wants to learn. And, he'll eventually probably move on and move on to bigger and better things. But at least we could feel like, he had a good foundation, and we exposed him to as much as we could, in what we had here. So.
And what are some of those things that you've learned over the years? Is it, food related, managing a business? What are some of the highlights that you would have to say, like, here are the top 5 things that I've really have been hit home?
For me?
Yeah. Or even Lucia. I mean, as a group, with running the business, because I'm sure the menu has evolved, how you run things has probably evolved, the catering stuff, and there's so many aspects to a restaurant.
Maybe we can bounce back and forth. I think one of the biggest things is, we opened Cafe Lucia sort of modeled after La Salette in a lot of ways, but knowing all the time that it would sort of carry on its own personality. I'm here and I want to have my touches. For example, the private events thing is something I enjoy doing. piece. And then we added Sunday brunch, which has been fun. And I like that. And I just felt like the courtyard was the perfect setting for that. So that was a way to sort of add my personality. The flip side is something I didn't really know going into opening a restaurant in Healdsburg, even though I lived here all these years and had been following very closely the restaurant climate, is how seasonal Healdsburg can be compared to Sonoma. It really does quiet down here. And so we get a little busier in the spring and summer, and then we have the fall where everyone wants to come for harvest. Where Sonoma, maybe it's because of its proximity to San Francisco, and also just because it's and I guess Napa, and because it's just more known in a lot of ways. I mean, when I moved to Healdsburg, there were a lot of storefronts that were vacant. It was very much a sleepy town, but it's become really a destination location now. But even still, it's very, very seasonal, and so that's something I didn't know going into it that I wish I'd known. Because January gets really lonely up here. So, but we're past that. We're happy to be in February, and
right.
It's a beautiful day here.
And you had it was Valentine's Day yesterday, even though this is that's another time you're probably putting that on, but and that is the date for a restaurant.
That's the kickoff. Yeah, that's when we start to kind of kick off, and especially when we're having gorgeous weather like we are in Sonoma County. And then just another thing that's along this that I want to mention is I think that everyone knows that we had the wine country fires that took place, the wildfires that took place last October. It was actually the night of Jason's wedding. He was off to Portugal and left us dealing with that, so he doesn't get to experience that on his resume.
I like to say that I leave the area for 5 minutes and the whole place combusts.
Literally. So what happens in Sonoma County or with that is obviously the restaurants are fine. We did have to close for different periods, especially the ones in Sonoma, because there was areas of evacuation and whatnot. But for the industry and for us here in wine country, it's been more of a financial as far as, folks just need to really come out and support. Sonoma County is fine. It's as beautiful as ever. There's some areas, of course, that were hit, and they're rebuilding, and they're really resilient. So I would love to see more folks come up this way. So going back to the original question, I think my answer is a little more tongue-in-cheek because, having gone to school, I had sautéed fish before. It wasn't that I was necessarily learning how to cook per se, but some things that they don't teach you in culinary school, like refrigerator maintenance, things like that, which, I really think that they should add that too. Like just general equipment maintenance would be a great tool to have. And a lot of the more behind the scenes stuff, the marketing aspect, the bookkeeping aspect, those things that, they may touch on in culinary school and you might get in different aspects, but you don't really get to it until you really see and crunch the numbers and work with QuickBooks and build a POS system and those things that have just really been eye-opening for me.
Right. There's a lot of people out there that, down deep they're thinking, oh, one day I'd love to open a restaurant. And it's a hard work. It is very, knowing from family members who have been in the restaurant business that is long gone since closed, but they did it for many years. It is very hard.
Yeah, it's like it's manual labor. In a lot of ways, I kind of joke about that, but it goes back to it calls you. It's a passion project. It's great to see it build. It's the family that you build together. It's the guests that come in. I remember when we first opened, there was a table and I walked up to her and to say hello, and the woman was crying, and I didn't know what to think, right? Because you just open a restaurant, you're thinking, oh no. I could see the Yelp review, and she was crying because she was having the bacalao, and it reminded her of her grandmother, and she was so touched by that and the memory, and she was just sharing it with me, and it gives me the chills just now saying that. But that's why we do it. We do it because we want to celebrate our culture and heritage. And like we were talking before, there's not a lot of Portuguese folks around us, but we always embraced our culture, and then food was just the way to carry it on and share that with everyone. And so that's kind of I'm like holding the Portuguese flag kind of thing.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And you're absolutely right. there are certain memories in our lives, and usually there is food involved in that. So that when we have that food, whether it's the smell, the taste, it just really does put you back into that moment with your loved ones, at that table, at that Portuguese table.
Mm-hmm.
And food is huge. That is a huge, food memories, I think, are one of the largest memories you can have. It's something that gets triggered when things like that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's one, and that you celebrate it. And you're right. It is like waving our flag. And I know how proud we all are of who we are. And that's a wonderful thing. Now, let me ask you this. What is the best, like, let's say your 2 top dishes that you have there that people go, oh my God, this is definitely like Mom?
I'll field that one. So I think the bacalhau, I mean, is classic, right? Whether it be the cod cakes, the bolinhos de bacalhau, or the more traditional, what we call the bacalhau no forno, which is similar to like a bacalhau agomsa,
Nice.
the casserole. Those dishes, I think, really hit home for a lot of guests that come in. And, you know, I think the Portuguese population up here is a little more removed, the few of us that are living up here, than maybe down in San Jose, where it's a lot more first generation born. Where here it's not necessarily that they grew up eating it, but maybe they had it when they went to their aunt's house or their great aunt's house or their grandmother's house. So the memories are a little more removed and therefore a little more ingrained, a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, the forbidden fruit, for some people. And then the other dish that is really, really popular, and we can attest to how many we sold on Valentine's last night, is our arroz de camarão. So we do a wild prawn rice with, we do it kind of in a more modern take. So we cook it more risotto style, and it has chorizo in there. It has peas in there. And we make a lobster broth that we cook the rice in. And then it's finished, which I think really sets it over the top, with an uni butter, which is sea urchin, ouriço. And then we make that with the garlic butter, and then we fold that into at the very end, which just really highlights the flavor and really makes it pop. Really popular dish here at the restaurant.
Oh my God, I did not have that one when I was there. But
You have to go back.
Next time.
There'll be a reason to come back.
Next time. I also want to one other thing is I want to comment is I would go to bread. Maybe it's because I'm a carbosaurus, but we make our bread every day. We call it the La Salette rolls. And that's something that for me, it triggers a memory, because I remember my mom making bread every week and holding the pan for her. That was sort of my job. But people really love coming in and getting a nice warm roll. You know, and restaurants have moved away from offering bread in a lot of cases, and it's just a nice little treat that we offer. And that just starts, and we start our morning. That's the first thing we do, is get the bread going. It's sort of like, you know, sweeping the sidewalk. You know, you can't open until you do that kind of thing. So
Yeah, so they're is it the same rolls that are served at La Salette? Because that was your mom's
same
recipe.
recipe. Right? My mom's recipe, same recipe.
Yeah,
La Salette
awesome.
is celebrating 20 years next month, so in March.
So great.
Same rolls. Yeah, lots of rolls.
I'm going to use that carbosaurus.
Carbosaurus, I know, right?
My daughter's nicknamed me that. I don't, you know, what are you gonna do?
That.
Yeah, I love my carb.
So Jason, I know you said that, like, in culinary school, you know, you learn how to saute fish and stuff like that, but did you already have some experience cooking Portuguese dishes, you know, from whether it was at home or your grandmother or anything like that? Or did you really learn a lot of the Portuguese dishes when you started working for Emmanuel?
Well, I think it's twofold. So growing up, my parents are big entertainers. I mean, having people over at the house is a weekly thing. It's not uncommon to have 15, 20 people over on a Wednesday night, and that was kind of how I grew up. So
Uma casa portuguesa, com certeza, right?
Oh, always, yeah. So there was always a lot of food going around, but also my parents were really involved with the local festas down there. So cooking sopas or doing the crab feasts and that stuff. They were always the cooks. They were always in charge of that. So on a more kind of, not necessarily professional, but a more structured setting, I grew up with that and having those flavors and those smells. I mean, I can still like remember the smell of having like enough paprika and cumin to season sopas for 1,000 people in the back of my car driving. That smell, it's hard to get out of the car. It's hard. Those memories. So growing up that way, absolutely. And then, my mom and both my parents, great cooks, cooked a lot of Portuguese food, but there's Azorean. Both of my parents are from São Jorge as well. And they cooked what they knew for the most part. Coming here to the restaurant really broadened my perspective on Portuguese cuisine, and I was able to dig deep in different aspects of Portuguese food, and it's very regional and very different from north to south. And when you talk about Madeira and the islands, and we also have influences here at the restaurant from all the different parts of the Portuguese Empire, whether it be the Goan clams that were on the menu at one point, or the feijoada that's on the menu today. There's a lot of influences in Portuguese cuisine all the way around the world. So being able to tap into that and doing a lot of self-study through books and learning, and also being able to experiment and put dishes on the menu that share our culture in lots of different ways has added to that as well.
Wow.
Very cool.
That is very cool. I'm still thinking of the rice with the prawns. I'm just still thinking of that dish.
Maybe we'll overnight some to the East Coast for you.
There you go.
Oh yeah,
that's what we want everyone to do. Yeah, we want everyone to leave. We want everyone to have that lingering thought, like, oh, that's what I want, or leave here and wanting to come back.
Yes, I want to be there right now. If I could just be there right now, I would.
So we talked about the memories that food can trigger, and so we always have to talk about food memories with our guests. And so, what are some of your first food memories, or what's your first food memory that you can go back to your childhood and doesn't have to be baby food, but what's like that first thing that really sticks out in your mind?
I don't know. I don't know if it's really my first food memory, but what I remember when I think about childhood and the Portuguese is type food, obviously. My dad used to always call me the gata de Marcela because I always loved Marcela growing up. And he loved that I loved it, and I remember going to a cousin's house and they had a matanza, and then we'd make Marcela, and the whole ritual of the event. That really reminds me. And then I think the other kind of more kind of fun memory, I guess, now, my daughters laugh about this one, is I used to tell them that, growing up, we lived pretty frugally, and I remember there was a family of 6. My parents would pull over, and I don't know if any other Portuguese family has done this, but they pull over and they see fennel and they just start cutting away at it. And they go home and make a pot of soup. But when you're like 7, you think your parents are like picking weeds, and they're cooking up weeds, and you're thinking, wow, things are pretty rough. But
nowadays you could put that on the menu here in Sonoma County and call it foraged, and people would salivate over it.
Exactly. I have a whole new appreciation for fennel. But those are like the 2 memories, of course. And then I just think, helping my mom make bread, or making a lot, because like I said, I love my carbs. Making sweet bread every Easter with the egg inside, and flores and squillas, one of my favorite treats. Or those are the kind of memories I think of.
And for me, I think aside from like the smell of the sopa spices in the back of the car, those are some early ones. But I think my first cooking memory that I can distinctly remember, because obviously it didn't turn out as planned. Both my parents worked. I was a kid, and probably not as PC as it is now, but left home alone, probably 8, 9 years old. We had just come back from a trip to San Jose, to the Portuguese market up there, which was kind of a monthly ritual. We would go and kind of stock up on some supplies. And I remember pleading with my mother. I didn't have to plead too hard, but I asked my mother to get some packets of Boca dos flan, which I can picture exactly what it looks like now. It's like a Portuguese Jello company. They make puddings, but the company's Boca dos, and they make a flan. So I'm home alone, bored. It's summer, so I'm not at school. And I think, okay, I'm 9 years old. I can make flan. So I look at the instructions, and it says put 4 cups of milk on the burner and bring it to a boil. Well, I had no idea that milk grows as you boil it. So I put it in a pot that fits 4 cups just about perfectly.
Uh-oh.
And this thing starts growing and growing, and I have no idea how to stop it. And I turn the gas stove off. And of course, like any good Portuguese house, we had 2 kitchens, one in the garage and one in the kitchen. But I was being a rebel that day, so I used the one in the kitchen.
Uh-oh.
And there was milk literally everywhere. Everywhere. I remember calling my mother and saying, "What is going on? This milk won't stop." And it was just poured over. There was probably 4 cups of milk on the floor, and I don't think there was any left in the pot by the time I was done. Needless to say, we didn't make flan that day. And I scrubbed as best I could, but my mom was still rather upset when she got home.
And then he still went on to culinary school. So there you go.
Learned my lesson.
Yeah. He knows how to boil milk now.
You got to start somewhere, right? And you learn from
That's
making
right.
mistakes, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the reason you were asking about my brothers, we were very exposed to cooking in the kitchen very, very young. It was, I don't really remember learning to cook. It was just sort of like walking. It's just like what you do. It's like the natural progression. And so it was great. We were exposed to it, and I appreciate that. And I also have my daughters very involved with cooking and being comfortable in the kitchen. I think it's important.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, that's something that I think Marie and I have talked about, and I know that I talk about it with my husband and some of our friends, that I'm just always pretty shocked at the number of people we come across that really don't know how to cook anything.
Yeah.
Or maybe are just intimidated, and then you come to find out that maybe their parents or especially their moms also don't know how to cook, so they didn't teach them or anything like that. Because I will say everything I know, for the most part, as far as technique and just how to work your way around a kitchen, I learned from my mom. And it would be, I didn't even really ask. It would just be like she would say, "Hey, Andrew, come here. I want to show you how to do this, just so that you know." And so there's things like that I remember: how to brown beef, how to saute an onion, how to whatever it is. It's like she just would say, "Hey, you need to come over here and learn this." And those
for what it's worth, that doesn't end. For what it's worth,
well,
even when you're a professional, and it doesn't end. And
Jason's mom puts him to work.
Yeah,
that's good. That's what a good mother should.
She'll still tell me when I'm doing something wrong.
That will never end.
It sounds like my mom with Manuel. We were over at her house, and she was making this chicken and rice dish that my brother loves. And I had a little video clip of them because she was still She was correcting him because it was her recipe and her dish, and I loved it. I loved watching that. It was great. He's like, "Yeah, Mom, I know. I don't. I'm just a chef, but whatever.
Moms will always win. They always win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, another thing I was thinking about before we jumped on to record this is because you guys are up in an area where there's, not a lot of Portuguese people. And so I was curious if, do you find that people, when they're starting to, what do we want to eat tonight? Kind of run down the list of ethnicities that you can choose from, right? Do people kind of throw Portuguese in there? Because I know for us, so we live in Fremont, it's like, so what are we going to eat tonight? Like if we decide we want to go out, you've got, Indian, Korean, Chinese, Afghani, Mexican, and Portuguese never comes up because it's just not within our vicinity, So I'm wondering.
Oh, it's not. Yeah.
And Angela, you got 100,000 Portuguese people in your immediate access, and we've got 100 Portuguese people in ours. So if Portuguese isn't on your radar for lunch, it's probably not on the person up in wine country for the weekend because there's barrel tasting. It's really been a teaching thing, and a lot of the locals have caught on, and we love to see the growing amount of Portuguese restaurants in California with Telmo and Umakaza and
Yes.
the Adega folks down in San Jose. I think it's all great because the more Portuguese restaurants we have, the less likely it is for someone to walk past our menu and see, our tagline is Cozinha Nova Portuguesa and think, I've never heard of that, or what is Portuguese food, or where's Portugal? I'm not feeling like Asian food tonight. Like, wait a second, what?
Yeah, and I think that's where our reputation comes in, and having La Salette, obviously, because they've been there so long, people do know what La Salette is. And luckily we have a lot of folks that have traveled, and so they are familiar and they are looking for something different. Mm-hmm. But there's still, there's still lots of room, because if someone hasn't heard about Portuguese food or isn't familiar, they're less likely to try something new on without researching it first, That's where
I was just curious about the accessibility of it, because frankly, if Cafe Lucia was like 10 minutes from us, we'd probably be there at least once a week. It's one of those things where, and yes, people listening to this podcast are from the Bay Area. They'd be like, well, San Jose is like right there. And yes, but at dinner time, it takes an hour to get there.
Yeah.
And so it's
hectic.
Everywhere we go, it's like a destination. You have to make a plan to go versus, we're going to stay within our, 10, 15 minute vicinity. And so Portuguese food just isn't an option for us here. But if it was, like I always joke with Maria, it's probably a good thing I don't live on the East Coast where there's 100 Portuguese restaurants to choose from, because I'd probably weigh 400 or 500 pounds because I'd literally be there like all the time. No, you don't. But so I was just curious if the accessibility had become more, made it more of an option to people. You know what I mean? Like people.
I think once people have discovered us and then they share it with their friends, just like anything else, and we are lucky that we, for lunch, for example, we do have a handful of people that come in weekly, that have come in since we opened that are, super loyal. And
That's
the
awesome.
local folks, do kind of recognize that in winter the restaurants need a little more love, and they're pretty good about sending it our way. So, and we do have a good rapport with our, tasting rooms and retailers in town. And Jason touched on the marketing piece earlier. I do a lot of that, just reaching out. It's one of those things, you're working in your business and you're also working on your business, because we're small. I don't have a marketing person. So I do a lot of my own and try to reach out, whether it's through Sonoma County Tourism or the Chamber, just different things like that, different mixers and opportunities, just to remind people, because we have a great spot, but it's a little bit tucked away, which kind of reminds me of that, that European experience, you're kind of walking along and all of a sudden you there's this cafe, but we do have to remind folks for sure.
Yeah. And, the good thing in all of this is that, like we're talking about it, we have this podcast. We have, we need to constantly be educating everybody about us and what we're doing. And whether it's different parts of our culture, and food is a huge part of our culture. And I think once a non-Portuguese person tries it or experiments with our food, what is there not to love? Our food is just a very comforting, not fancy, but very, our food is love. Our food is love. And I just see it as the more and more we educate, the more and more our word gets out, the more and more people will want it. And that is what I hope for. And I know Angela feels the same way.
And we do too. And I agree with you 100%. I say, we're here to educate.
Yeah.
Because it's true. It's true. People do need to be kind of aware. And I think once they give it a chance or give it a second look, they do realize, like, hey, that sounds great. I love this. And then they have a new discovery,
And I think one thing that's changed in the last few years too is we get a lot more guests coming to the restaurant that have been to Portugal and they've traveled there and had a great experience, and they come in and they say, oh, I had this dish and I was there and I want to experience that again. Can I have this salted cod again? And I said, you've come to the right spot. Right. So that happens a lot more often than maybe it did even 5 years ago when we opened. And I'm sure definitely when Manuel opened La Salette, I don't think traveling to Portugal was really on a whole lot of people's radar, but as things change, people are becoming more aware, and that's all great as well.
Right.
And another thing I would say, kind of along those lines about awareness or people just kind of embracing, is our Father Night. We've done one every year, and it's this last year we had it set for, I believe, October 15th, and because of the fires, we actually had to cancel it, reschedule it, and we sold out pretty quickly, and then I had to move it to a date in December, right? And it sold out again, and there was a wait list. So that really told me that this was catching on, and people are getting familiar, and people ask about it a lot if we're doing another one. And that's, just from the time when we opened and how much I had to promote that from the first event to now, I sent a newsletter out, and next thing I know, we're sold out, so it says a lot about, I think, the progression of how people are picking up on it and the awareness.
Yeah. That is wonderful.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. I mean, because especially in an area, again, where there's not a lot of familiarity with Fado, but the fact that a Fado night sells out where you are, that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks volumes. That actually speaks volumes. And I know we've said this before in other podcasts we've had, but being from the East Coast, I truly am spoiled. I am spoiled because I can pick and choose from so many different Portuguese restaurants. So going to California, where I know there is a huge number of Portuguese people that are there. There's, granted, it's a huge state and everyone is spread out, and it literally would take me an hour or two to get from one little place to the other. And of course, I'm thinking, oh yeah, we can be here and then we can go there. No problem.
Yeah. And it looks close on the map, right?
Yes, it looks so close. And then you get there and it's like, oh my God. So when I was up in Gustine, I had asked someone there who would just happen, they saw the cameras around me and all that stuff. And then we started talking, and of course it wasn't being recorded, but they were asking me, and I was like, okay, so here, is there like a Portuguese restaurant you can go to? And they start laughing at me. And they're like, only if we, drive, so many hours to one. I'm like, so what do you do? They're like, we cook at home. It's like, where's their Portuguese bakery? And they start laughing again. It's like 2 hours that way now. And it's like, so what do you do? They're like, we bake at home. So it's a type of thing where people in the East Coast have no idea.
Preach, Maria. Preach.
Just how lucky we are. But in the meantime, when you go over to the West Coast and you go visit there, you better go see those Portuguese businesses. And you better go support them, even though it might take you an hour to get from here to there. Because guess what? They're amazing. They're doing amazing things out there. Mm-hmm. And we have to be proud of what is ours. We have to be proud of what is ours and support what is ours. That is, I will shout it from the rooftop, and I will get on my little soapbox, and I will, because we need to do that. We need to support each other. End of story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ponto final.
Ponto final. Si, senhora. We can't say that enough. We can't say it enough. All I can say is, for someone who's been there, who was a couple of the different restaurants of Manuel, and then going to your restaurant there, I loved it. And I can't wait to go back. And I have friends of mine who are going to Petaluma this month. And I'm like, hey, you can go to, and at the same time you're in Cataluma, you can go see Achadinha cheese. Cause that's another one, the Pacheco family.
That's right.
Like,
we're it's not too far apart. Yeah.
No.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we do need to support one another. Absolutely. It's funny you say that, because I thought about it, that if we had removed La Salette, for example, before we opened here, where would I go get Portuguese food other than cooking it or going to my mom's house? Really, I kind of taken it for granted too, that it's always sort of been available, but so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a little part of my head that says, for those that live in the East Coast that want to open a Portuguese restaurant, and you know what? go move out west.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's start opening up off here and there so that it isn't 2 hours between, or 4 hours between a restaurant. There's just, the need is there. The need is there. Sure. I just see it as that. I really do.
So what's next, guys? I mean, it sounds like you're going to maybe have some more fado nights in the future, but anything else on the horizon that you want to share with our listeners about, I don't know, maybe new menu items or anything? I don't know.
I think, our brunch is still fairly newish, and that's been a fun way to introduce actually folks to Portuguese food who maybe are a little unsure, because our full lunch menu is available at the same time. And then a really popular item on our brunch menu is the francesinha sandwich.
Yes.
Folks like that. And that's perfect for brunch. And then this year, really, we're working together more to with the events and some catering. So that's kind of the direction we're thinking about taking. Now that we kind of have our legs under us a little bit, is the plan going forward. Anything you have to add, Jason?
Yeah, just touching on the brunch menu, I think, I helped develop some of those items, and it was a fun thing because they're kind of classic breakfasty, brunchy items with a Portuguese twist on them. So we do a Portuguese French toast, and we make it with homemade massa cevada, which is
my God, that's it.
Yes.
And then our eggs Benedict, rather than using like an English muffin, we use our rolls, which Lucy talked about earlier, and they've got linguiça on them, and then it's a piri-piri hollandaise sauce over the top of that. So there's a lot of kind of Portuguese influences on the menu, but it's still somewhat approachable. So it's kind of like Portuguese food with training wheels.
Yeah.
To make sense.
The piri-piri hollandaise sauce, I've always loved eggs Benedict and hollandaise sauce, but the piri-piri hollandaise sauce, oh my gosh, it is just so good. Love it. We look forward to Sunday. I think I put it on the menu just because I want to have Sunday brunch, hey, whatever works.
We were talking about the French toast with massa cevada, which is amazing. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. But the other day I was talking to, and we've talked about this before, but using what we have left over and making it bread pudding. And I make bread pudding out of so much different things. And one of the things, and Angela had said, Maria, do you have a picture of it? I'd love to see how it looks. And I said, you know what? When I made it, everyone ate it so fast, I had no time to even take a picture. But I made malassadas or filhos. And so I had made some. And usually when I make some, it's gone. I mean, I have no leftover of it. But for whatever reason, I had extra, and in my home, we call it malassadas because I'm from San Miguel, and that's what we call it. And so I had extra malassadas. So I made bread pudding from malassadas. And let me tell you, it was incredible.
I can't even imagine.
Doesn't sound gluttonous at all, Maria. Doesn't sound gluttonous at all.
No, not at all. I'm on a C diet, all you can see diet kind of thing, a seafood diet.
Yes.
Seafood diet. Yeah,
that's why we immediately bonded when you were here. And when your husband and my husband met, they bonded too, because they were like they're married to some crazy Portuguese gals.
Yes, they are. They got along well.
So I did. But yeah, and I would just say that I wouldn't be able to do any of this without my husband's support. So he's the most non-Portuguese man I've ever met. I mean, he's super supportive. Would probably move to Portugal in a heartbeat. That kind of thing. He loves everything about it.
Yeah, this is now, Angela, I don't think you knew this. So, of course, our husbands meet of course, now we're talking one spot and our husbands are off to the side and they're talking away and, they're sharing, whatever and stuff. And they're like, I would move to Portugal. I love everything about it. And my husband's, oh, me too. I would do that too. Da, da, da. So it was like they had known each other for like forever, and they were like the same. They felt the same. Right? They're like, yeah, and your wife, yeah, my wife, yeah, your wife, yeah, my wife too.
It was funny.
The power of Superbuck.
The power of Superbuck, yes. Entermus. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think you both
Super.
are very lucky to have found non-Portuguese who have embraced the culture because, unfortunately, some people that used to be very involved in the community, then find a non-Portuguese spouse, and they come around for a little bit, but eventually they sort of get bored with it, and then the person becomes less involved. So I think you all chose quite well when finding your spouse.
Yeah, that was part of the deal. I came with a cat, and you had to embrace the Portuguese culture. That's we've had 2 daughters in the festas. I mean, he's it's like he's
That's
right
awesome.
there. Whatever we need. Yeah.
Yeah. So you told him about the conversion ritual that we have, and no, I'm kidding.
The seances.
Right. So I actually did have one suggestion for your brunch menu. Just try it at home.
Yeah.
And if you like it, give it a try. But farinheira or alheira, either one, with scrambled eggs, or make an omelet out of it.
So good. So when the fire was happening here, I was on my honeymoon, and there's a restaurant in Lisbon called Taberna Rua das Flores. And I'm not sponsored by them, but go to that restaurant. It is awesome.
Let's all go now.
And they had their take on farinheira e ovos. And it was just a simple omelet, as classic as it could be. And then inside the omelet, 3 bright orange egg yolks, just raw. And it was the most amazing thing, just creamy, like salty, sweet because of how delicious those yolks were. It was perfect. That's one of my favorite breakfast dishes for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, we had it.
Is that similar to how you make yours, Angela?
Well, we first had it at a restaurant, and I forget the name, but it's at Campo Pequeno in Lisbon. So the Bull Ring in Lisbon, they've remodeled it many years ago to have lots of restaurants and shops and things like that. And it's a restaurant that serves tapas, like tapas style food. And they had it's basically just, they kind of mix it around together. It's scrambled eggs with some farinheira. And my husband and I had it, and we literally almost fell out of our chairs. It was so good. So then we've done it a couple of different ways here. We've done it where it's more of like a scramble, but then we've also done it as a classic omelet. I think I personally like the scramble better, but either way, it's just, oh my God, to die for. And the thing is with farinheira, because it's got that mushy texture. Some American people may be like, oh, it's kind of mushy, but the flavor, it is just to die for.
It sounds good. Sounds like we'll have to explore that for sure. Do some recipe testing. Yeah. My favorite part.
Oh, definitely. That is one of my favorite parts. Whenever doing a different recipe for book 2, it's like, okay, today it's testing. And then my neighbors know about that when I'm testing because I go over.
Do they volunteer? Let us know when you're testing. I'll be your
I want to be your neighbor for sure.
Come on out.
I want to go, Maria. I want to go on the road with you next time you're on the road.
Okay.
I'll carry your bag. Yeah. I'll help your husband out.
Well, you know what? Next time when we go, we're already talking about season 2, and we haven't even put on season 1 yet. But we're already talking season 2. And season 2, I want to go to São Jorge. I want to go to Terceira, and I want to go to Pico. And but I guess when we're in Terceira or Pico, we can go to Feial. So let's we can go there too. But those are the places we want to go. And I want to go back to California. I want to go back.
Yes, we'd love to have you. I'd love to see you.
Oh, God, I loved it.
It's a balmy 70 degrees right now, so bring a light jacket.
You know how to hurt a gal. Oh, my God.
So Jason and Lucia, I have to say, I rub it in. I rub the weather into Maria all the time because she's spoiled with the food and we're spoiled with the weather. Yeah. So I'm like,
we're 35 degrees today, folks. 35.
Oh my gosh. No, on the way in today, like I see hot air balloons. I mean, it's just gorgeous, and the mountain backdrop. It's just like, it's going to be a good day when you see hot air balloons in the morning in February.
Wow. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's beautiful.
All right. Well, folks, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we've reached our hour. I mean,
oh my God, have we?
Oh,
yeah.
We have.
We've been going for an hour.
Time flies.
So it does fly. And as much as we would love to keep chatting, we've talked about reducing the time of our podcast in the past. We certainly can't do that because
no. You know
really
what? This has been a
anything.
wonderful podcast.
Yeah.
I thank you for being on. I know how busy you guys are, and for you to take the time out to talk to Angela and I, it means so much to us.
No, it was a pleasure and an honor. And I think we did pretty well not talking over each other for being Portuguese.
Great, impressed. We could start now.
We can start now, yeah.
we could do that.
Well, that's why we have Scott. He's he can calibrate and make some of us a little more silent than others. But
when people are like, it's like, are they yelling? No, they're just Portuguese. Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. That's right.
But no, we certainly thank you for your time. And we thank our listeners for always hanging in there with us for the full hour. And we hope it's as entertaining for them as it is for us to have these conversations, whether you're listening while you're cooking in the kitchen or on a drive somewhere or at work. We hope that we've brought some good laughs and to your day and maybe even jogged a memory or two. Because it certainly does for us every time we have these conversations.
Yeah, this has been
brings things
wonderful.
back. Yeah, so if you haven't been to Cafe Lucia, please visit up in Healdsburg. You can find their information online at www.cafelucia.net. Menus are there. Beautiful, beautiful pictures, everything. So pay them a visit. Tell them we sent you. Tell them Murray and Angela sent you, and you'll get a good Portuguese hug and kiss from both Jason and Lucia.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Yes.
But
Thanks, ladies. It's been a pleasure.
We're
Thank
so
you.
proud of you. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, so proud of you.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah.
All
So
right.
thanks everybody. And
Okay.
if you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do so. And please take a few minutes to write us a review on iTunes. It really does make a big difference in helping other people find the podcast. And please share with friends and family. Spread the word, because it's all about sharing information, sharing our talents, and sharing the good work that our community is doing. So with that, thanks everybody. And
Até a próxima.
até a próxima.
Até a próxima, querida.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Obrigada. Adeus.
Bye.
Deus, ciao.
Thanks again for listening to our Portuguese Table podcast.
If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so on SoundCloud or iTunes.
And all episodes can be found on our website at www.ourportuguesetable.com.
You can also reach us at feedback@ourportuguesetable.com with comments, questions, or suggestions. Até a próxima!